Our next discussion talks about attitudes towards inflation. So those who are going to win, those who are going to be harmed, and those who are going to be unaffected by inflation. In general, we said that most people were going to be harmed by inflation, but there's going to be a certain group of people that either benefit or are going to be unaffected when inflation does take place within the country. So those who benefit are debtors or borrowers are going to benefit because the real value of their fixed payments fall over time as wages rise with inflation. And we're going to come with a little bit of a specific example to compare the debtors versus the creditors to see why the debtors win and the creditors are going to lose. In terms of those who are going to be harmed, as we mentioned before, people living on fixed income see their purchasing power decline. So if we're not earning some type of returns or interest on our savings, that tells us that our purchasing power declines and therefore we're going to be harmed by inflation. On the other hand, creditors and lenders see the real value of their loan repayment fall. So if you are actually going to be lending money, you're going to be harmed by any type of inflation that may happen. So borrowers win. It's a good time to borrow money when inflation is happening. If you actually lend money when inflation happens, such as a bank, then you're going to see the real value of your loan repayment fall and you're going to be harmed by inflation. Those that are going to be unaffected are workers who have escalator clauses, and we'll take a closer look at that. And also Social Security recipients whose benefits are adjusted with inflation. So if your mother, father, grandfather, or grandmother collect some type of Social Security, you're going to see that check value go up or go down depending on what the inflation rate is within the US. And then finally, banks that properly anticipate inflation are also going to be unaffected. Here we want to go ahead and take a closer look at the debtors and the creditors to see why the debtors are going to benefit and why the creditors are going to be harmed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the specific example right with this. So example, who benefits and is harmed with inflation? So who benefits / is harmed from inflation? So suppose I tell you that the anticipated inflation rate is equal to 4%. So anticipated inflation is equal to 4%. So just based on the data that we have, we expect inflation to be at a robust 4%. Suppose that you want to go ahead and take out a loan from a bank. If you want to go ahead and take out a loan from a bank, the bank is going to charge you some type of interest, and the loan terms are equal to, say, 7%. So loan terms of interest are equal to 7%. So loan terms of interest rate equals 7%. You borrow money from the bank, their bank is going to charge you 7% interest. So if you are a creditor, if you are the bank in this instance, the lender, you expect how much of a real return? The bank is going to expect a 3% real return in this instance. So how exactly do we get that? So creditors, those that are lending out the money, expect a 7 minus 4, 3% real return. So in nominal terms, the bank is gaining 7% profits or on their money, on the loans that they're giving out, because that is exactly what they're charging. However, inflation is going to be eating away at 4% of the return, so therefore the real return the bank is going to receive is 3%. Likewise, when we want to borrow money, we're going to have to pay 3% of our real wages out as repayment. So here, creditors expect a 3% real return, and the borrowers, they expect to pay out 3% of their real wages when we have an inflation rate equal to 4%, when the anticipated inflation equals to 4%. However, what happens if we make a mistake with inflation and actual inflation actually doesn't match up with our anticipations? Then we notice that some people are going to be harmed and some people are going to benefit from this. So what would happen? What would happen if inflation increased? If inflation increased to 6%, So instead of it being 4%, something happened within the economy that caused inflation to rise to 6%. Who's going to win and who's going to lose in this scenario? Creditors in this instance, they're no longer going to get the 3% real return. How much are they going to gain now? They're only going to be gaining 1% real return, so creditors are going to lose out. So they charge a 7% in terms of the interest rate, but their inflation is going to eat away at 6% of that, so now they're only going to be expecting a 1% real return. So in this instance, anytime inflation goes above or beyond our anticipated inflation rate, the creditors, the lenders are going to lose out. But this is going to be some type of a zero-sum type of game where someone wins and someone loses. So who benefits at the creditor's expense? That's going to be the borrower. So borrowers are going to win. So no longer do they have to pay 3% of their real wages out as repayment. They only have to pay out 7 minus 6, 1% of their wages as real payment. So in this instance, we notice that, hey, it's a really good time to borrow money if we notice that inflation is going to be higher than what we sort of anticipate. And it's also interesting to note that it does work in the opposite direction as well. That's where we change everything in the opposite case. What happens if inflation were actually, say, maybe 2%, the actual inflation rate were 2% rather than anticipated 4%? In this case, the creditors are going to win out because they have a 7 minus 2 equal a 5% real return. They're gaining a lot more in terms of real payments, and borrowers are going to lose out because now they're paying 5% of their wages, their real wages, as payment. So you do want to be a little bit cognizant of what the actual inflation rate is in terms of the anticipated inflation rate. Here, if it's greater, then the creditors lose and the borrowers win. But if it's less, it's just the opposite case where the creditors win and the borrowers lose in that instance. So although we do say inflation is going to be harming the vast majority of people in general because we see the purchasing power decrease, we do notice that there are going to be certain groups of people that can win when certain sort of events or circumstances happen. We want to take a closer look at those that are going to be unaffected by inflation by taking a closer look at escalator clauses a little bit more in detail in the next video.